After World War I and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the 1920 Treaty of Sèvres promised the Kurds a state. That promise was never fulfilled, as modern-day Turkey was founded in 1923 by the Treaty of Lausanne. Some refer to the Kurds as the largest ethnic group without a state. They remain a minority group in authoritarian countries who have, at times, faced severe crackdowns from governments who see them as a threat.
Far from being a homogenous population, the estimated 30 to 35 million Kurds who live along the borders of Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria are actually a very large and diverse group of people. They share a common history, a common language, and a strong desire to establish a homeland. Mutlu Siviroglu is a journalist with VOA's Kurdish language service and an expert in Syrian and Kurdish affairs. He spoke with Plugdane's Milar Sega about the Kurdish struggle for independence.
So, yes, they're not monolithic. They have linguistic differences. They have tribal differences. Yes, in each part of what Kurds call Kurdistan, the dynamics are different. The relation with the central government is different. But they have a common identity. They call themselves Kurds. They call their homeland Kurdistan. Because the circumstances in each part of Kurdistan is different. So the Kurds of Turkey dropped the demand for independence around 15, 20 years ago. And Kurds of Syria, they never they never sought independent Kurdistan. They want a decentralized Syria where Kurds and other ethnic and religious minorities can live together. Like you say, they have Western values. They want to be part of the West. That's why Kurds of Syria, for example, they chose U.S. over Russia. And that's what this disaster is happening to them. Because Russia believes that Kurds need a lesson. Because they chose the U.S. over them. Because, as you know, Russia is a traditional ally of Bashar Assad, Syrian president. So, and many Kurds believe it's the green light from Putin as well caused Erdogan to attack Kurds, because he feels the more Kurds of Syria get power, they get status, the Kurds in Turkey will demand similar things. So Kurds, in a way, paying the price of being pro-Western.
Are you surprised that Kurds are not receiving more international support towards building their own country, their own independent country, in a land that is in desperate need of democratic principles?
I'm certainly disappointed. I certainly believe Kurds deserve more, because it's in the benefit of the West too. To support people that share their values, people that treat different ethnic and religious groups not as a threat, but as a richness. But when you look to the support for the Kurds, it's very minimal.
I wonder what your thoughts were when you heard the president comparing what was going on there in Syria to kids in a playground fighting for their toys.
As a journalist, as an American, I took it very hard, honestly, because we're talking about the lives of people. This is not a game for kids. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. People are forced to leave, and looting, killing, execution, and the streets are full of bodies. This is what's going on now.
So you're suggesting that the U.S. administration's decision to pull its troops out of Syria is already backfiring?
Certainly. It's already backfiring, and I'm afraid it's going to get worse. First of all, for the people of the region, because they are displaced now. You cannot solve a refugee problem by creating new refugees, by expelling people from their homes, by making them, miserable, by causing their death. This is not a solution. With all due respect, President Trump promises to end wars, but it's not going to end wars. This is going to make it even longer and longer. And also, the credibility of the U.S.
is at stake.
Is certainly at stake. So Kurds have stood with U.S. They lost a lot of their brave men and women. Now U.S. is abandoning them. We had a report at VOA a few days ago. South Koreans are starting to worry. Our allies are starting to worry that, are we going to be the next? U.S. cannot afford abandoning their allies.
Look, every crisis presents an opportunity. The fact of the matter is people are talking about the Kurdish situation today. Do you see perhaps some light at the end of the tunnel here, that perhaps the world will be talking about the plight of Kurds as a result of what we're seeing today?
I like to be optimistic. I am always an optimistic individual. As at the moment, there are my relatives, their life is at stake, because I have immediate relatives there. I have hundreds of friends calling me every day.
It's personal.
It's personal, to asking a glimpse of hope that Mr. President is going to change, is going to realize that maybe he was a good intention, but the outcome is different.
What do you want our audience to know about the Kurdish situation?
I want them to know that yes, they share similar values, like our audience. They embrace diversity. They respect the people's identity, people's faith, people's religion. If the world is secure today, it's thanks to Kurdish men and women, And my hope is that they're going to remember this, and they're not going to let, especially Kurds in Syria, to be killed or to be massacred, displaced, and because they caused the hope when the world was most gloomy, most pessimistic from ISIS. It was the little Kurdish town Kobani became the hope, and they defeated. That was for you, for me, for everybody. That defeat, they paid the price for all of us, and it is time for people to stand with Kurds.
So far, more than 12,000 Kurdish fighters have died in the U.S.-led war on terror. And now the questions. Are we less secure now that American troops are leaving Syria, or more secure? And will the Kurdish people ever get the support they need to establish their own state? To help us answer these questions, I'm joined by VOA National Security Correspondent Jeff Zeldin and Hasib Ali Kozai from VOA's Extreme and Watch Desk. Welcome, gentlemen. And first, let me go to you, Jeff. ISIS, after what's happened in the last 2 weeks, is it thought that ISIS is going to regenerate itself, so we're less secure?
Well, military and intelligence officials in the U.S. have said already that ISIS has been resurging, both in Iraq and in Syria. And intelligence officials, counterterrorism officials worry that this will just give them more opportunities to take advantage of divisions, of chaos, of the different movements of troops. And the other problem is figuring out what ISIS is going to do next. How these terrorists are going to take advantage of the situation is going to be more difficult, because as you have fewer U.S. boots on the ground, fewer U.S. troops in Syria, fewer people to work with the SDF and other allies on the ground to figure out what's going on. And that makes the ISR, the drones that you can fly, the planes you can put in the air to watch from above, that much less effective. And again, Islamic State is very skilled and very experienced in using chaos, divisions, and uncertainty to its advantage. And they've seen this before from the U.S. Remember, Islamic State came out of Al-Qaeda of Iraq, which went through something similar back in around 2006.
Hasib, one thing that nobody's talked about in the last several months is the fact that al-Baghdadi, who is the head of ISIS, he released a video, I think, last April. So the head, the inspiration, is still alive.
It very well is, and he has actually asked his supporters to kind of go back to an insurgency versus controlling large swaths of territory in those countries. But to put a light on the Kurdish issue there, history is kind of very important here. They have always tried at creating a state of their own. Their aspirations have been crushed a number of times. They're essentially a victim of geography. They're among very strong states. You have Turkey there, or former strong states. You have Syria, you have Iraq, you have Iran. And their most recent effort at creating a state was crushed in 2017 by the Iraqi security forces. One thing that's important about the Turkish Kurds, they're the most organized, politically active. And Turkey has always been scared of those Kurds, that they will eventually separate and create a state of their own. Now, next to
I was in Iraq, and I actually went to the Kurdish cemetery where you see such evidence of the Kurdish slaughter and how the Kurds have been treated in that area. I mean, they really are in the most unfortunate situation geographically.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's like, history is so important here to see. It's not just the last 2 weeks. It is what has happened to the Kurds in recent history, in the last 30, 40 years.
Absolutely. Saddam Hussein went after them and in the 80s and 90s, and they have been in a very hostile geography to begin with. They were promised a state after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in First World War, and with the creation of modern-day Turkey in 1923, Turkey was not even admitting to their identity